The alarms on Outpost Keeler began screaming at 3:17 station time. Red lights flooded the command deck as the warning echoed through the metal corridors carved into the asteroid's hollow core. Containment breach warning. Technicians snapped upright from their consoles. Security officers grabbed weapons. Screens across the room flickered to life, displaying the enormous containment chamber far below the station. Inside the chamber lay something the galaxy had spent centuries trying to destroy. A Vorgath war beast. The creature filled half the pit. Its massive body was covered in thick, fractured plates of natural armor that looked more like starship hull plating than scales. 4 colossal limbs ended in hooked claws capable of tearing through reinforced steel, and a long, muscular tail rested along the floor like a coiled siege weapon. But the monster that had once flattened cities now barely moved. Its breathing was slow, uneven, weak. Vitals dropping again, one technician whispered, staring at the biometric readings. Heart rate declining. Commander Reth stood silently behind the observation glass overlooking the pit. For months the station had studied the creature. The Vorgath had once been the ultimate weapon of the fallen Krail Empire, engineered to break enemy fortresses and survive orbital bombardment. Entire armies had been routed by a single beast. But the empire that bred them had collapsed decades ago. Their war beasts were scattered across the galaxy. Most had been hunted down. Most had died. This one had been captured during the final battles. And since that day, it had simply stopped fighting. The creature refused food. Ignored water. Ignored attempts to provoke it. It didn't roar. Didn't attack. Didn't move unless absolutely necessary. It simply lay there, as if waiting for something. Or perhaps, waiting for the end. Structural armor damage critical, another scientist reported quietly. Without its natural plating intact, the creature's internal organs are under extreme strain. On the monitor, the massive beast shifted slightly. One cracked plate along its side had collapsed inward, revealing dark flesh beneath. It looked less like a monster now. More like a wounded titan. Commander Reth sighed. We've spent too many resources on this relic. The room fell silent. Everyone understood what that meant. Outpost Keeler wasn't a research sanctuary. It was a military station. Resources mattered. Time mattered. And the war beast below them had already taken the lives of 30 soldiers during its capture. If the creature somehow recovered, the station might not survive. Reth turned to the weapons officer. Prepare termination protocol. Across the chamber ceiling, automated defense cannons slowly rotated into position. Heavy plasma emitters lowered toward the pit. Energy cores began charging with a rising mechanical whine. Still the creature did not react. The massive beast lay motionless, its glowing amber eye half-closed. Almost like it didn't care what happened next. Target locked, the weapons officer announced. Awaiting authorization. Commander Reth raised his hand. But before he could give the order, the airlock doors at the rear of the observation deck slid open with a sharp metallic hiss. A single figure stepped inside. Human. The station's newest mechanic. Marcus Hale. He had only arrived 3 days earlier to repair a damaged mining rig. Now he stood quietly at the back of the room, staring down through the observation glass. His eyes fixed on the creature below. For several long seconds, Marcus didn't say anything. The room barely noticed him. Everyone's attention was on the war beast. But Marcus kept watching. Studying. Then he spoke. Why are you killing it? The question cut through the tension like a blade. Commander Reth turned slowly. Because it's dying. Marcus frowned. That's exactly why you shouldn't. Several officers exchanged confused glances. Reth folded his arms. Human, that creature is responsible for the destruction of 7 planetary defense networks and the deaths of over 3 million soldiers during the Krail Wars. Marcus looked back down into the pit. The beast shifted slightly. For the first time since the cannons activated. Its eye opened wider. Glowing amber. And it looked directly up at the observation window. Directly at Marcus. Marcus exhaled slowly. Then he asked another question. Has anyone actually tried helping it? Silence spread through the room. Commander Reth gave a short, humorless laugh. It's a weapon. not a patient. Below them, the massive beast released a low, exhausted rumble that vibrated through the chamber floor. Marcus stared at the creature for another long moment. Then he turned back to the commander. "You're wrong." Reth raised an eyebrow. Marcus pointed down at the wounded titan lying in the pit. "That thing isn't a weapon anymore." He paused. "It's a survivor." The plasma cannons continued charging above the pit. Energy building. Moments away from firing. Marcus stepped toward the security door leading down into the containment chamber. Several guards moved to block him. "What are you doing?" one asked. Marcus gave them a calm smile. "Stopping you from making a mistake." And before anyone could stop him, the human mechanic opened the door to the pit and walked toward the most feared creature in the galaxy. The containment alarms grew louder as the blast doors to the pit slid open. Cold air rushed up from the enormous chamber below. Every soldier on the observation deck leaned forward in disbelief as Marcus Hale stepped through the doorway. "Stop him," someone shouted. But Marcus was already walking down the long metal ramp leading into the containment pit. Below him, the Vorgath war beast lay motionless across the reinforced floor. Even injured, the creature looked impossibly large. Its body was longer than a transport shuttle, its cracked armor plates layered like the remains of shattered battleships. Each slow breath made the entire chamber tremble. Commander Reth slammed his fist against the console. "Human, return immediately." Marcus didn't even turn around. Instead, he continued walking toward the dying monster. High above him, the plasma cannons remained locked in place, their targeting lasers dancing across the beast's massive body. "Commander," the weapons officer said nervously, "if that creature attacks him." "Then the human dies," Reth replied coldly. "But we will not risk losing the station." Down in the pit, Marcus finally stopped about 20 meters from the creature's head. Up close, the damage was far worse than the cameras had shown. Huge sections of the creature's natural armor had collapsed inward. One plate along its ribs was split completely in half, exposing dark muscle beneath. Burn scars and old wounds covered the beast's body. It looked less like a monster now. More like a battlefield survivor that had never been given time to heal. Marcus slowly crouched. The enormous creature stirred. One glowing amber eye opened. The pupil narrowed as it focused on the small human standing in front of it. For a long moment neither of them moved. Up on the observation deck, soldiers tightened their grip on their weapons. "It's watching him," one technician whispered. "Why isn't it attacking?" Marcus spoke quietly, his voice echoing through the cavernous chamber. "Hey there." The creature released a low rumble. Not aggressive. Just tired. Marcus studied the shattered armor plates along the beast's chest. His brow furrowed. "Yeah, that's bad." He pulled a small diagnostic scanner from his tool belt and slowly raised it toward the creature's body. The beast's eye followed the movement. Several soldiers above gasped. "If that thing moves." But the creature didn't attack. It simply watched Marcus. The scanner beeped softly as it began reading the creature's biological data. Marcus frowned deeper as the results appeared. "Commander," he called out calmly without looking up, "when was the last time anyone actually examined this thing properly?" Commander Reth crossed his arms. "We've conducted dozens of scans." "Medical scans," Marcus replied. "But has anyone checked its structural integrity?" There was a pause. Marcus slowly stood and pointed toward the shattered plates along the creature's torso. "Those scales aren't just armor," he said. "They are part of its skeletal support." Confused murmurs spread across the observation deck. Marcus continued studying the readings on his scanner. Without those plates, the creature's entire body weight is collapsing inward. He tapped the screen again. "Look at this. Internal compression across the thoracic cavity." One of the station scientists suddenly leaned forward at his console. "Commander, the human might be correct." Reth turned. "What?" "The beast's organs aren't failing from starvation," the scientist explained. "They're being crushed by its own body weight." Marcus nodded slowly. "Exactly." He looked down at the massive creature again. "It's not dying because it wants to." He gestured toward the shattered armor. "It's dying because it can't stand anymore." The enormous beast let out another low rumble, as if confirming his words. Marcus placed a hand carefully against one of the cracked plates. The metal ramp above creaked as soldiers shifted nervously. "Human, step away from the creature," Commander Reth ordered. Marcus ignored him. Instead, he walked slowly along the beast's massive body, inspecting the broken armor plates. Every step he took echoed across the chamber floor. Finally, Marcus stopped near the creature's shoulder and looked back up toward the observation deck. "Commander," he said calmly. "Yes." Marcus lifted the scanner. "This thing doesn't need to be executed." The commander frowned. "Then what does it need?" Marcus thought for a moment. Then he smiled slightly. "It needs repairs." The observation deck exploded with laughter. "You plan to fix a war beast?" "With what?" another officer mocked. "A wrench?" Marcus shrugged. "Maybe." He looked back down at the creature. The enormous amber eye was still watching him. Carefully. Quietly. Marcus spoke softly, almost like he was talking to the beast instead of the officers above. "Your armor's gone." The creature released another weak rumble. Marcus nodded slowly. "All right." He turned back toward the observation deck. "Cancel the cannons." Commander Reth stared at him in disbelief. "You cannot be serious." Marcus held up the scanner. "If you fire those weapons, you're killing the last living specimen of a creature the galaxy spent centuries trying to study." Reth narrowed his eyes. "And if we don't?" Marcus glanced back at the wounded Titan beside him. Then he said something that made the entire room go silent. "Then I build it new armor." The commander laughed harshly. "You intend to build armor for a creature the size of a warship?" Marcus nodded. "Yep." Silence fell across the station. Then the human mechanic added one final sentence. "And when it stands up again, you might want to be glad we helped it first." For the first 12 hours, no one believed Marcus Hale. Not the soldiers. Not the scientists. And certainly not Commander Reth. The entire station assumed the human mechanic would eventually give up, realize the impossibility of what he had proposed, and walk away from the dying war beast. But Marcus didn't leave the containment pit. Instead, he went to work. The first thing he did was request access to the station scrapyard. At first, Reth refused. Then one of the scientists pointed out something important. "If the creature dies anyway, we lose nothing." So the commander reluctantly approved the request. And that was when the strangest engineering project Outpost Keeler had ever seen began. Marcus started collecting metal. Not the polished alloys used in starships. Not the precision components used in advanced technology. Just scrap. Broken mining exoskeleton parts. Damaged cargo loader arms. Discarded ship hull plating. Fragments of reactor shielding. Anything thick. Anything strong. Anything that could support weight. Within hours, the cargo bay looked like a junkyard explosion. Marcus worked in silence, dragging massive metal plates across the floor, welding joints together, cutting shapes with plasma torches. Up in the observation deck, the station staff watched through the glass with growing curiosity. "What exactly is he building?" a technician asked. One of the engineers leaned closer to the screen. "Not armor." "What?" "It's not armor," the engineer repeated. "It's a support frame." On the display, Marcus was assembling enormous metal structures shaped like curved ribs. Hydraulic pistons were being mounted at the joints. Magnetic locking clamps. Shock absorbers. Layer after layer of reinforcement. The design slowly began to make sense. "He's building an exoskeleton," the engineer whispered. Commander Reth frowned. "For the creature?" "Yes." The engineer tapped the screen. "The beast's natural armor used to distribute its weight across its body. Without those plates, the internal pressure is crushing its organs." Marcus wasn't replacing the armor. He was rebuilding the creature's skeleton. Down in the containment pit, the Vorgath war beast watched everything. Its massive head rested against the floor. Amber eyes slowly tracking the human moving across the chamber. Marcus climbed ladders. Dragged welding equipment across the floor. Mounted support braces into place. Sometimes he had to climb directly onto the creature's back. The first time he did that, half the security team nearly opened fire. But the beast didn't react. It simply watched him. Curious. Observing. Hours turned into days. Marcus barely slept. He took short breaks leaning against tool crates before getting back to work again. Sparks from welding torches lit the dark chamber like small bursts of lightning. Metal plates slowly formed a massive frame around the creature's torso. 4 reinforced support braces were built around its legs. Hydraulic joints aligned with the creature's natural movement. By the 3rd day, even Commander Ref had stopped laughing. Because the machine Marcus was building was actually starting to look functional. Power integration, one engineer asked. Marcus had somehow managed to wire the entire structure into portable reactor cells salvaged from an old mining rig. Hydraulics. Cargo loader systems. Shock absorption. Mining drill stabilizers. The entire thing was a patchwork of industrial technology. Ugly. Heavy. But powerful. And somehow, it worked. Late on the 4th day, Marcus finally stepped back from the enormous structure surrounding the creature. The exoskeleton wrapped around the beast's torso and limbs like mechanical armor. Reinforced plates rested over the damaged sections of its natural scales. Hydraulic supports aligned with its muscles. Magnetic locks secured the entire frame into position. Marcus wiped grease from his face and looked up at the observation deck. Well? No one spoke. Finally, one of the engineers asked the obvious question. Will it work? Marcus glanced back at the creature. The massive amber eye was still watching him. Only one way to find out. Marcus climbed onto the frame and connected the final power cable. The reactor cells hummed to life. Lights flickered across the exoskeleton. Hydraulics pressurized. Magnetic clamps locked. A deep mechanical rumble filled the chamber. The massive structure surrounding the war beast slowly stabilized. Marcus jumped down from the frame and walked toward the creature's head. All right, big guy, he said quietly. Let's see if this helps. For a long moment, nothing happened. The creature remained still. Then one enormous claw twitched. Up in the observation deck, several officers gasped. The creature slowly flexed its limb again. Metal braces adjusted with a heavy mechanical hiss. Hydraulics compensated for the movement. The enormous beast shifted its weight slightly. For the first time in months. It tried to move. The entire station held its breath. The creature pushed one claw against the floor. The exoskeleton's support pistons extended. Metal plates groaned under the pressure. Then, the massive war beast lifted itself off the ground. Slowly, carefully. The reinforced floor trembled as its full weight shifted onto its legs. Marcus took a step back. Watching closely. The beast stood there for several seconds. Then it took a step forward. The ground shook. Up in the observation deck, someone whispered the words no one expected to say again. It's standing. For the first time since its capture, the galaxy's most feared war beast was back on its feet. And it was wearing armor built by a human mechanic. For several long seconds after the war beast stood, no one in Outpost Keeler moved. The observation deck was completely silent. Dozens of soldiers, scientists, and engineers stared through the reinforced glass at the impossible sight below. The Vorgath war beast was standing. Its massive body towered above the containment pit, reinforced by the crude but powerful mechanical frame Marcus had built around it. Hydraulic pistons hissed softly as they adjusted to the creature's enormous weight. The creature shifted its stance. Metal braces compensated instantly. The exoskeleton held. A deep rumble rolled through the chamber. Not pain. Not rage. Something closer to relief. Down in the pit, Marcus slowly circled the beast, watching every movement carefully. Easy, he muttered. Take it slow. The war beast turned its massive head toward him. Amber eyes glowing. Marcus raised a hand calmly. Yeah. I know. Feels weird after being stuck on the floor for months. Up on the observation deck, Commander Ref suddenly snapped back to reality. Security teams, prepare containment. Soldiers rushed to their stations. Defense turrets lowered from the ceiling again. Tracking sensors locked onto the enormous creature. Commander, one officer said nervously, if it attacks. Then we fire, Reth answered. Below them, the creature took another step. The reinforced floor trembled under its weight. Hydraulics in the exoskeleton absorbed the shock. Another step. Each movement was slow, cautious, like the creature was learning how to walk again. Marcus kept watching closely. Good, he said quietly. The supports are holding. The war beast suddenly lifted its head higher. Its glowing eyes scanned the chamber. The soldiers above tightened their grip on their weapons. Targeting lock confirmed, the weapons officer reported. Awaiting firing command. The creature turned. For a terrifying moment it looked directly toward the security ramp leading up toward the observation deck. Several guards raised their rifles. Commander Retha's voice echoed across the chamber. Hold fire. Then something unexpected happened. The war beast slowly turned back toward Marcus. Its massive head lowered. Slowly, carefully, until its armored snout rested on the metal floor beside the human mechanic. The entire observation deck went silent again. Marcus looked up at the enormous creature and chuckled. Well, that's new. The beast let out a low rumble. Not threatening. Almost like a deep, mechanical purr vibrating through its massive chest. Marcus stepped closer and gently tapped one of the new metal plates on the exoskeleton. Armor upgrade looks good on you. Above them, Commander Reth stared in disbelief. Impossible! One of the scientists leaned closer to the glass. It recognizes him. Reth shook his head. No. That creature was bred only to obey Krail commanders. Maybe, the scientist replied quietly. But it's not obeying him. Everyone watched as Marcus scratched the side of the metal armor frame thoughtfully. The beast didn't move away. Instead it leaned slightly closer. Marcus laughed softly. Oh great. I built armor for a monster and now it wants attention. The creature suddenly lifted its head again. Its glowing eyes focused on something beyond the chamber walls. Toward space. Toward the stars beyond the station's hull. A low growl vibrated through the chamber. Different this time. Alert. Marcus frowned slightly. You hear something? The station sensors suddenly lit up. A technician shouted from the console. Commander! Multiple ships emerging from hyperspace. The main screen flickered to life. Outside the asteroid station, space twisted as 30 pirate vessels dropped out of warp. Raiders. Heavily armed. Commander Reth cursed under his breath. Of all the times. Pirates had been targeting remote stations for months. Outpost Keeler was isolated. Lightly defended. Normally it would have been an easy target. Alarms began blaring across the station again. Battle stations. Defense cannons rotated toward the approaching fleet. Fighters began powering up inside the hangar bays. But everyone in the observation deck kept glancing down into the containment pit. Because the war beast was still standing there. Watching. Waiting. Marcus looked up toward the command deck. Then back at the creature beside him. Well, he said quietly. Looks like you picked a good day to learn how to walk again. The massive beast released a low rumble. And for the first time since its capture, the creature looked ready to fight again. The pirate fleet surrounded the asteroid station within minutes. 30 ships. Fast. Heavily armed. More than enough to overwhelm a remote mining outpost. Red warning lights pulsed across every corridor of Outpost Keeler as the station's defense cannons powered up. Shields at 70%. Enemy targeting systems active. Multiple torpedo locks detected. Commander Reth stared at the tactical display in disbelief. Outpost Keeler had defenses, but it was never meant to survive a full pirate fleet assault. Not alone. Launch fighters, he ordered. Delay them as long as possible. But everyone on the observation deck knew the truth. The station wouldn't last long. Below them in the containment chamber, Marcus Hale looked up at the flashing warning lights. He sighed. Great timing. Beside him, the massive Vorgath war beast lifted its head. The creature could feel the vibrations running through the station's structure. Engines. Weapons charging. Incoming war. Its glowing amber eyes turned toward the sealed hangar doors at the far end of the chamber. Marcus noticed. You want to see what's going on? The creature released a deep rumble. Marcus scratched his head. You know, that armor wasn't designed for space. The beast's tail slowly shifted across the floor. The exoskeleton's magnetic clamps clicked into place automatically. Marcus blinked. Then he remembered something. Oh! 3 days earlier, while assembling the support frame, Marcus had added something extra. Just in case. Old magnetic maneuvering thrusters salvaged from mining equipment. They were never meant for something this large. But they might work. Marcus looked up toward the observation deck. Commander Reth stared down at him. What are you doing, human? Marcus pointed at the hangar doors. I think we're about to test the new armor. Reth's eyes widened. You cannot possibly be suggesting. Marcus grinned. Trust me. Before the commander could object, Marcus activated the external controls on the exoskeleton. Hydraulic locks tightened. Thrusters primed. Magnetic stabilizers hummed. The massive hangar doors slowly began opening. Cold vacuum poured into the chamber. Emergency fields activated to keep the atmosphere inside. The enormous war beast stepped forward. One heavy step. Then another. The entire station trembled beneath its weight. Up on the observation deck, soldiers watched in stunned silence. Commander! Is that creature leaving the station? Reth whispered quietly. Yes. Outside in the black vacuum of space, the pirate fleet approached the asteroid station confidently. Their sensors detected only light defenses. A small fighter wing. Station cannons. Nothing serious. The pirate flagship commander grinned. Prepare boarding parties. Then one of his officers spoke nervously. Captain, we're detecting something near the station hangar. What kind of ship? Not a ship. The hangar doors opened. And something enormous stepped into space. The pirates stared at their screens in confusion. The massive shape launched forward using bursts from its magnetic thrusters. Metal armor plates glinted against starlight. 4 colossal limbs moved with terrifying strength. The armored war beast slammed into the pirate flagship. The impact crushed the ship's forward weapons array instantly. Panic spread across the pirate fleet. What is that thing? The creature roared for the first time since the Krail Wars. The sound vibrated through vacuum as a shockwave of raw power. The armored claws tore through the pirate hull like paper. Explosions erupted across the flagship. Other pirate vessels opened fire. Energy blasts slammed into the creature's armor. But Marcus's exoskeleton absorbed the impacts. Hydraulic braces redistributed the force. The beast kept moving. Another ship tried to retreat. Too slow. The creature slammed into it with unstoppable momentum. Within minutes the pirate formation collapsed. Ships scattered. Engines burning as they fled. Retreat signals filled every pirate channel. Fall back! Get away from that thing! The war beast hovered in space for several seconds, watching the remaining ships disappear into hyperspace. Then it turned back toward the station. Inside Outpost Keeler, every screen displayed the same unbelievable sight. The armored war beast drifting slowly back toward the hangar. The entire station was silent. When the creature stepped back into the containment chamber, Marcus was waiting. The enormous beast lowered its head again. Right beside him, Commander Reth finally descended into the chamber. He stared at the creature. Then at Marcus. I do not understand, he said quietly. Marcus shrugged. Pretty simple. Reth folded his arms. That creature was bred as a weapon. Marcus nodded. Yeah. Then why didn't it destroy us? Marcus gently tapped the metal armor frame. Because we didn't treat it like one. The war beast rumbled softly beside him. Marcus smiled. Empires build monsters. He paused. Then looked up at the towering creature beside him. Humans build partners. Weeks later, stories began spreading across the galaxy. The last Vorgath war beast had not died after the fall of the Krail Empire. It had been rebuilt. Rearmed. And now it traveled the stars beside the one species reckless enough to repair a monster instead of destroying it. Because sometimes the most dangerous creature in the galaxy is the one that remembers who saved it.